morning, Mr. Gaurav. We'll start in a couple of minutes.
Sure, no problem. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're perfectly audible.
Okay, perfect.
Hello, everyone. A very good morning to you all. This is Pragya, your host for the morning, and happy to welcome you all to a new session of Expert Talk series organized by Institute of Product Leadership. We have been successfully hosting the Expert Talk series, inviting the best of minds to share their perspectives and inspire the community of working professionals in product management, data science, design, strategy, and leadership. Before we start today's insightful session, let me give you a quick intro to the Institute. The Institute of Product Leadership is Asia's first business school providing accredited degree programs and certification courses in product management, product leadership, data science, design, strategy, and leadership. The Institute has partnered with 3 universities in India and the University of Houston in the United States. The Institute was founded in 2012 with a singular mission of creating 10,000 plus product leaders in the country. Ever since, the organization has designed and delivered programs in collaboration with various institutes, universities, and corporates to senior working professionals to help them make career transition to product leadership. The Institute has built and developed a community of over 3,300 plus successful alumni, leading the product, data, and design teams across the world. We are also knowledge partner for 250 plus organizations worldwide. You can find out more about the Institute and the programs offered on our website. Please check the chat window for the URL. And for those who have joined us via LinkedIn, please check the comment section for the URLs. Once a speaker presents his insights, we'll open up for questions. Please keep your questions ready. You can post your question in the Zoom Q&A window, or you can raise your hand so I can unmute you. This session is being streamed live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So viewers on any of these channels, please feel free to post your questions in the comment section and we'll share it with our speaker. Without further delay, please allow me to welcome our very distinguished and renowned speaker of today, Mr. Gaurav Mundra. Mr. Gaurav has 17 plus years of software product management and services delivery experience. He has successfully delivered 0 to 1 and 1 to N enterprise IT products. He has built and sold a successful edtech SaaS company where he handled product management, marketing, and fundraising. He has expertise in market and customer research, problem identification, product vision and strategy, solution delivery, building MVPs and full-scale products, go-to-market strategy, product roadmap handling, team hiring, and mentoring. That's really very much to say. He has also worked in an agile environment, creating and improving product backlogs. He has also shown collaboration, leadership, and entrepreneurial skills in a rapidly scaling environment. This has been possible with his strong communication skills and ability to influence leadership and cross-functional teams. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Gaurav, and we are very glad to have you here for the session today and handing over the session to you.
Pragya, thank you so much. And good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this Sunday morning. And I'll try and make it worth your while you're here. I will try and keep this session not too, bookish or, very, very academic. I would love to share my experiences. I would encourage you to share your experiences in the chat window. And if you have any questions, please feel free to, keep sending your questions on the chat during the session. Don't wait till the end. At least when I wait till the end, I forget. So I would strongly encourage, please keep sending your questions. I'll try and answer some questions in between if I find them adding value during the particular topic of discussion. But otherwise, I'll definitely take them up, towards the end of the session as well. So I'll quickly share my screen. Give me 1 minute. Share my desktop. Sorry, give me 1 minute. Pragya might get disconnected, but let's see. Give me 1 minute.
Yeah, sure. So Mr. Gaurav got disconnected for a while. And let's see if we have more questions coming up. You can post your questions in the Zoom Q&A window, or you can just raise your hand to ask the questions directly.
Okay, sorry, I'm back. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Mr. Gaurav. Good to go.
Let's see if I can share my screen now. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Fantastic. So, fantastic. See, one of the, and I'm assuming that a lot of people who are in the audience today are either product management professionals or people who want to make it big in the world of product management. And typically what happens is when we talk about product management, when we read the books, when we do the courses, when we join similar other sessions on product management skills, invariably we're talking about B2C products. Very little has been discussed in particular about B2B product management. And there's a debate that goes on, where a lot of people will say, whether it is B2B or B2C, at the end of the day, people are making decisions. So what is the difference? I, on one hand, would make a decision whether I want to buy my next meal from Swiggy or Zomato. And I will be the one making a decision in my office whether we should be using the Windows Microsoft Office suite or the Google G Suite, right? So the same human is making the B2B and B2C decisions. So what is the big deal? They should be pretty much the same thing. So part of it is true. Part of it, I beg to differ in my opinion. So the part that I believe is true is, yes, we are dealing with humans. And same humans invariably make the decisions about B2B and B2C at different points in time, but their motivations could be very, very different in those two different scenarios. Okay, so let's devote the first part of this session in trying to understand what motivations do people have when they're trying to solve the B2B challenges, and how do they solve for those motivations. All right. And again, as you have questions, please keep sharing them on the chat. Right. So product management 101, figure out your buyer personas and your user journey map. Have we all heard of that? For sure, yes. But what is the difference between a B2B and B2C scenario when it comes to buyer personas? In the B2C, obviously, yes, we have buyer personas. So again, I'll take an example, Swiggy here. We all use Swiggy or Zomato or something similar to order meals every now and then. And then we have people who like to, order more, order less, higher value, lower value. Some people order more lunch, some people order more dinner, so on and so forth. So you try and come up with these user personas or buyer personas. In B2B, the situation is slightly different. The reason being, the buyer is not the user. Okay. So I'll take an example of my company where I work right now. It's a good sized healthcare IT company. We have about 7,000 employees spread across various geographies. And very often the technology that people use is a decision made by a few senior management professionals. So the CTO or VP of technology or the VP of engineering will come together and make a decision that, yes, we're going to use G Suite. We will not use MS Office. But how often do they end up using the same solution versus in a B2C scenario? So that's one major distinction, that in a B2C scenario, more often than not, your user is your buyer. Okay. Yeah, there are scenarios where a parent might be buying something for a child, or someone might be buying something for their parents, so on and so forth. But the norm is the buyer and user are invariably the same set of people. In B2B, multiple decision makers are involved in the purchase process. It's not just the buyer and the user, but there are other personas like influencers. So the compliance team, the legal team would be influencers on what can or cannot be used. And when you are buying or selling a B2B product, whether it is software or otherwise, these people play a significant role in deciding what to buy, how to buy, and then how to use it as well. So be very, very careful. Do not ignore all the other people who have these influences when it comes to the personas in a B2B scenario. All right. Next, what is the customer's influence in a B2B versus B2C? Typically, you must have heard customer is king, customer knows everything, so on and so forth. In a B2C scenario, they make a decision whether they want to use it or not use it, but the revenue that an individual brings in a B2C scenario versus the revenue that one customer brings in a B2B scenario can often be a game changer. Again, taking Swiggy as an example, what percentage of Swiggy's revenue would one customer bring in? Right? Very, very small. Now think of a software product company. Okay. So let's take an example of any Salesforce, large software product company, B2B. Now, one customer in Salesforce could easily be 15 to 20% of the revenue, right? If it is a large customer like a Tesla or a General Motors, right? So the influence that the customer brings to the table in a B2B scenario could be extremely different. You take customer feedback in B2C and B2B both, but the severity of implications or the seriousness of the customer feedback action is much, much, much higher in a B2B because they sit on a much larger share of your revenue than a B2C customer. Okay, again, major difference in how B2B companies deal with their customers versus a B2C company. Right. And I mentioned that the product management 101 always talks about user journey mapping. Figure out all the steps that a user will do in order to accomplish their need, want, or desire while using your product or otherwise, and how will your product fit in. In a B2B scenario, user journeys are often replaced by business processes. And your product or your solution might actually be playing a very small role in the entire business process. Right? The business process could involve using multiple software products, which will have to integrate with each other. So software A's output becomes software B's input, right? To accomplish the entire end-to-end business workflow. So often your product is just a part of the business process. Your ability to integrate with other software to use their output, or your software's ability to give input to some other application is often integral in deciding whether the customer will use your product or not. So let's take an example. Let's say you're running an e-commerce marketplace, right? You have a startup, you've built this e-commerce marketplace where you're buying and selling some sort of commodities online. You will have to maintain your inventory somewhere, right? All the goods that you have in your inventory that you're trying to sell will have to be maintained somewhere. So for example, you might be using Zoho CRM and the inventory module within Zoho. So Zoho inventory is your starting point, but the output of Zoho inventory becomes the input for your online catalog. The sales from your online website become an input for your accounting system, right? And I can go on. This could be a long run process, but please do understand that while Swiggy or a Zomato or a WhatsApp could be used just by itself as a B2C product, integration is extremely, extremely important when it comes to B2B. All right. Moving on. Customers' willingness to pay again plays an important role. So we earlier talked about what influence does each individual customer bring to the table when it comes to B2B versus B2C. But let's talk about B2B, customer willingness to pay. So one of the most used apps on the planet is B2C WhatsApp, okay, or Instagram, or Snapchat. Now, these are all free. And a lot of people use them because they are free. If WhatsApp started to charge, $50 a year or $20 a year or $10 a year for their users to use WhatsApp, a significant number of users might move to another similar solution which is free. Telegram, for example, right? So the B2C customer is extremely price sensitive in a lot of scenarios. They love freebies, right? What can I get for free without paying anything? And it may have 2 less features. So Telegram might have 2 less features as compared to WhatsApp, or it may not be as user friendly, right? No comments on Telegram. I'm using both those apps just as a hypothetical example. But the B2C customer will not be too fussy about the features. But when it comes to the B2B scenario, it's all about the return on investment, the usability, and the problem solving ability of the product. The price that people pay is suddenly much less important when it comes to the overall scheme of things. Instead of price, what is important is the return on investment. So for example, if something saves my company $50,000 a year, right? I might be willing to spend $25,000 a year to procure it. That's how the B2B mentality works. But in a B2C scenario, people would jump onto something which is less functional, less design friendly, less user friendly, and so on, but will more be concerned about the money. And the B2B scenario is slightly less price averse simply because the buyer and the user are two different people as well, right? How much end user benefit is perceived defines how well the B2B products are going to be used, which is why the branding and messaging is extremely important. Okay. Branding and marketing is equally important in B2C and B2B, right? So, but the messaging tends to differ between the two. But still, you would see more advertising for B2C type solutions because the impulse buying behavior of people's ability to switch from A to B is far easier. And we'll talk about the ability to switch a little later as well. Again, feature versus usability, we touched upon it a minute ago, but let's go into a little more detail. B2B solutions are to solve a problem. Whether they look pretty or not is a whole different story. So let's talk about pretty. Okay, we'll come back to this slide, but look at this screen. This is a Bloomberg share trading terminal, B2B. Now spend a minute, gawk at the screen, and on a scale of 1 to 10 in your mind, rate it how beautifully designed the screen is. Right? 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would not give it the 8s and the 9s and the 10s. Okay. Now compare this. This is a Zerodha share trading portal screenshot. Please don't look at my holdings. They are in terrible shape. I'm bad at making investment decisions, but please ignore that and look at the UI and UX of the screen. This is designed much less compact. There are more colors. Colors mean things, right? The buttons are highlighted. Font is bigger, smaller for a reason, correct? There are graphs, not just numbers. There are color grids, which say, okay, where are your investments? How big or small they are. So there is a difference between usability and design. The earlier one, the Boston, the Bloomberg terminal that you see in the background now has been designed to do hundreds and thousands of transactions a day. It is being used by people whose job is to use the terminal all day long, right? They might be using this software or screen or terminal for 8, 9, 10 hours a day. Whereas somebody who's using a Zerodha terminal might not be using the terminal for that long, right? So there is a difference between feature and usability and design and feature. Although a lot of B2B solutions are now moving towards better user design as well, because it has come up as a competitive advantage. But still, most large B2B solutions, whether we talk about the Jira, I don't know how many of you are using Jira, but those who are will agree that, it is not the most user-friendly experience. Yes, you can, do project management for almost all different kinds of projects. You could do a Scrum, you could do a Kanban, you could create burn down charts, you could complete all kinds of Scrum tasks within Jira, but still, is it the most user-friendly? Can you learn it quickly without a user guide? Probably not. Similar is the scenario with Salesforce, right? But they have all started making the UI look much, much, much better, because if A doesn't do it, B will do it and start using it as a competitive advantage. One other thing that we all have to be very careful about is updates. And again, we'll talk about updates later, but between feature and usability, I do want to point out that you can't change too much too quickly in a B2B scenario. Okay, and we'll get to the release business shortly. So again, this is more about design. Some of the key design principles that you have to be very careful in B2B. Okay, B2C design, everybody knows, we read it, we hear about it. There are podcasts, YouTube videos, everything. But in B2B, again, there are 4 or 5 key things that you have to be extremely, extremely cognizant of. Keep your users informed. What are you building? Where are you in that process? They need to know. The Swiggies and the Zomatos and the Instagrams and the WhatsApps of the world, they don't tell you what they're building and what will they release 6 months later. But the Salesforce, the Zerodha, right, the ICICI Direct, these guys will keep publishing their roadmaps in public domain sometimes. The Airtables, the Notions, right, these have public roadmaps that you can go and see, because they want their users to know what's coming next, so that users are informed. Users can give feedback. This is more important or that is more important. B2B companies want to hear a lot more from users, right? The information alignment on the pages should be very clear. It should be in a particular order which suits the workflow that the user is trying to accomplish. The buttons, the text sizes, the messaging has to be all very consistent, very standardized, so that users can expect things to work in a certain way. Imagine if my OK button is on the right on one screen and on the bottom left on another and top left on third, it becomes a difficult job to use that application. And I'm oversimplifying it by using that button example. But the messaging, the language, the placement of your action items, the placement of your error messages, confirmation messages, all of those things are super important to be consistent, right? And then business users are far less amicable to software errors. If you're placing a food order on Zomato and the app crashes, right, what will you do? Yeah, you'll curse a little, you'll open it again, place the order, you're good. But business users, the B2B users, will not live with something like this, because it hampers their productivity. It hampers their output. It hampers their return on investment, right? So you have to have a very consistent, error-free, reliable experience. And because business workflows are often complicated, the software can help in simplifying the workflows by keeping a minimal design. Let's talk about the relevant related things on one screen. Don't put too much on one screen. Make tabs to categorize and classify informations of different types, maybe even different screens, right? Again, all in all, function more important, design less important when it comes to B2B. Okay, how much can I do in lesser time is the mantra when it comes to B2B. Predictability. So again, I talked a little about it. In B2C, you can decide as a product manager that in the next release, I don't want to prioritize A, I want to prioritize B. And you can make that change and nobody would know probably because you may not have your roadmap in the public domain. The product manager has a lot more flexibility, or as we call it, wiggle room sometime, that you can make last minute changes. But in B2B, you have published, so Amazon, Microsoft, right? Apple, they will announce 6 months, 8 months, 12 months in advance what they're coming up with. So Apple has already announced they're coming up with iPhone 15. Now, Apple product managers cannot say that, okay, let's stop iPhone 15, let's do something on the new MacBook, right? Or if they have announced that they're going to bring cinematographic features in the iPhone 15 camera, then they can't decide last minute that, okay, let's not do it this time, we'll do it in iPhone 16. Same with software products, because your sales teams that are selling your B2B products are not just selling on what your product has today, but they're also selling what your product is going to have in the future. Right? So when you're selling a B2B product, the customer says, oh, but your product doesn't have A, B, and C. And the sales guy goes, no, sir, in the next quarter, we will have A and B, and in the subsequent quarter, C will also be there. You buy it now. I guarantee it's on the roadmap. We'll get it. So once you've made sales and you've taken $1 million from a customer, you can't change your roadmap overnight. Okay? So be very careful as a product manager on what you put on that product roadmap, because it impacts your users, it impacts the buyers, it impacts your sales team. Ultimately, it impacts your overall company, right? And similar is the case when you are taking out features. Okay, so overnight, WhatsApp decided that you cannot forward the same message in more than X number of groups at a time. Right? WhatsApp made that change, and then it announced we've made this change. In a B2B product, you cannot deprecate features just like that, because there might be hundreds, thousands, lakhs of users using that feature as part of their workflow. They will need to find out a different workflow, test the new workflow, train those hundreds and thousands and lakhs of users, make sure they have understood the new process, there are no errors, all the data has to be double checked, reports have to be cross-checked, user acceptance testing has to happen. And then you can say, okay, now I'm deprecating this feature. Right? And a classic example of this is operating systems like Microsoft Windows or Apple Mac, iOS. And they announce that, 6 months later or 12 months later, or in the next major release, which is scheduled for a year later, we will be getting rid of these features. If you're using them, figure out a way to deal with it with some other mechanism. Okay. Now, number of users. How many users would a B2C application have versus a B2B application have? And how does that number of users change over a period of time? Okay. I mean, obviously in a B2C company, the revenue per customer is smaller. So you try and get as many customers as possible. In a B2B scenario, you could have 100 customers and still be making more money than a B2C company that has 10,000 customers, because each of your customer might be $1 million customer. The other major difference here is, as a B2B product manager, you will almost always, okay, I'm going to say this again, almost always have access to your end users, because you know who's your customer. You have direct relationships with people there when you sold it to them, when you implemented, when you trained their users, when you troubleshoot their problems, when you do design sessions with them for further feature development. So you know them personally, right? And you could go back, sit with them in a conference room and take feedback. In a B2C application, that's very, very rare, if at all existent. WhatsApp will not say, okay, I will gather 100 WhatsApp users randomly in a conference room and, do a design session with them. Okay. So in B2C, all your users may not be heterogeneous. I mean, homogeneous. They could be heterogeneous. In B2B scenario, it's very likely that you will have large homogeneous group of users. So if I'm selling Tally, which is the accounting package, the largest user group would be accountants who are using my solution for bookkeeping, accounting, taxation, and so on. Okay. User research, usability testing are again two things that are done differently in B2B versus B2C, but with advancements in technology, those are converging and people have started doing similar things. So for example, when people used to make websites earlier, they used to put in heat maps just to see where my end user is clicking, how far down the page do they scroll, which part of the page do they spend the most time on. And now B2B applications have also started putting in heat maps to figure out which features are more used versus the other lesser used features. Let's start putting more focus on developing those rather than worrying about which is less used. Okay. Now, sort of slightly changing tracks here in terms of, so far we've been focusing on the user, B2B versus B2C. I want to now focus on the product managers, which is you guys, right? How is a B2B product manager different from a B2C product manager? Or are they the same? Okay, let's look at some dimensions here, and I would welcome comments from people who are listening to this session as to what they think. But one major difference that you will see is the need for industry expertise is very, very high in B2B. If you want to be a B2B product manager for a particular industry, you really need to understand that domain. For a B2C kind of a scenario, you may not be holding certificates or qualifications in that industry, or you may not have spent a dozen years in that industry before you become an expert. Again, taking Tally as an example, if you are a product manager of Tally and you're not from a commerce background, it's highly likely that you will not be able to make a huge impact. On the other hand, if you're a chartered accountant and the product manager of Tally, you understand not only the concepts of bookkeeping, all the different methodologies, all the challenges that accountants face when they, are keeping books, how can Tally solve them, which features to highlight, what's important, what's less important, depending on number of users, time of the year, so on and so forth. So these insights come with industry experience. So all my life, I've been a healthcare IT person, except 4 years when I did EdTech product management. And there was a lot of learning. A lot of learning came in at that point in time. But with healthcare IT, at least, I understand the domain reasonably okay. Okay. And I can talk meaningfully if I'm a B2B product manager in the healthcare IT space. Now I can talk about, okay, what should be the features in a messaging app, because it's a generic product. I use messaging. I understand the notions. I've been a B2C messaging app user for 10 plus years now. So it does not require me to have a specific degree or a qualification. Okay. But B2B is highly, highly specialized. And people with industry experience have a better chance of making it to a B2B product manager role. If you want to switch from a B2C to a B2B role, please think about getting industry knowledge, either by doing some courses or attending some sessions or working as a side gig in the industry that you want to get into. So that is important. Yeah, release frequency. As a B2B product manager versus B2C product manager, how do you deal with this? When we use all these apps on our phone, right, for messaging, for social media, for booking food, booking entertainment, travel, so on and so forth, you often see, oh, this app is now updated. So it'll auto update if the setting is on, and you don't necessarily pay too much attention about it. In fact, you feel happy that the app keeps getting updated, which means your experience keeps improving. The error that you were getting last time might have been fixed in the new release. In B2C, the release cycle is much smaller. The frequency is much higher. You could have releases multiple times a week. Okay. And most users don't pay attention unless you have some data cap and the app update takes a lot of data. All right. In B2B, it's on the other end of the spectrum. B2B users don't like too many updates because with too many updates, they have to learn new things. They have to learn about new screens, new layouts, new buttons, new features, which hampers the way they were already working. Okay, their productivity goes down. I'm sure a lot of people must have heard muscle memory, right? And the muscle memory kind of suffers. So that's a very, very critical thing. And like I mentioned earlier, that you will have to think about the release frequency that brings more changes. People have to figure out new workflows. People have to be trained. People have to be, tested whether they've learned the new workflow or not. Okay. So those are again very, very important things when it comes to B2B release of new features or new product ideas. I see a question from a friend, Dheeraj Shetty, who works for Siemens team-centered product with customers worldwide. Most of our product managers are based outside India, mostly near customers in the US. Do you think geographical proximity to customers plays a more or less important role in B2B product management? So what a fantastic question, Dheeraj. Thanks for bringing this up. I personally feel that your ability to interact with customers is important. Okay. And COVID did a lot of bad for the world, but the one good thing it taught all of us is you don't have to be in America to talk to a customer there. You could be on a Google Meet, you could start a jam session, you could be on a Zoom call, right? And have a in-depth 4-hour conversation with the customers. Obviously, if you're in the same conference room, it does make a slightly better impact. But I personally feel as long as you're interacting enough, engaging enough with your customers, being present in the US brings about 10% higher benefit. That's all. Right? That's my take. And people who are on the call are obviously, free to chime in with their opinions as well. Like I said, this is an open session that I would want to have. Yeah, Dheeraj, fantastic question. Thanks for bringing this up, man. And this is a real practical thing that's come up, right? So that's fantastic. Right, demo environment. How many of us have a WhatsApp demo app or a Swiggy demo app? or an Instagram demo app where I can learn how to use WhatsApp without actually sending embarrassing messages to my friends? Or how can I learn, applying filters on Instagram without sending my photo to the world with bunny ears on my head, right? We don't have it because that notion of demo environment does not exist in B2C, right? You want to use it, use it. It's one same environment for everyone. In B2B, you could have one or more demo environments. And oftentimes, this is B2B product management 101. You want to show new features to the customer in a demo environment, because if you put new features in a production environment, that might hamper the workflow and productivity. So you want to show it to them in a demo environment, let them play with it, right? Demo environment is called a test environment, a sandbox, because you want them to play inside this environment. Let them use the feature, make mistakes. You also see how a customer is interacting with the feature. That gives you the idea whether it is too complex, too easy. They have exception scenarios, edge cases, and so on. And in a B2B sale, demo environment is almost always a part of the deal. Customer says, I want a demo environment that I will use to test new features. I'll use the demo environment to train my people, right? I'll use the demo environment to create my workflows, change my workflows, and see what is the impact. I will use it to measure productivity before I roll out a change. So absolutely, absolutely, absolutely important to have the demo environment. And again, put your roadmaps in public, let your customers interact with it. The other advantage of doing that is a customer really needs a feature that your B2B product does not have today. And your competitor is touting that feature and saying, look, Gaurav's product does not have that feature, okay? My product has it. Don't buy Gaurav's product, buy mine. But Gaurav's website says, look at my product roadmap. This feature is coming next quarter. So if you love everything else and you can wait for a quarter for this feature, buy my product instead. Okay. So this will stop your customer from switching. Another significant difference is how a B2B product or a B2C product is sold. Did anyone come to sell us Swiggy, Zomato, Instagram, Facebook? No. We downloaded it from the Play Store, App Store, and we started using it. Maybe we don't use all the features. Maybe we don't understand how the whole thing works. But, nobody came and taught us anything. There might have been a help file. How detailed, in depth, we don't know. Most people learn it by trial and error. And the companies that make these B2C apps are absolutely okay if you don't use all their features. If you learn by trial and error, right? They will have a basic customer support that will help you get started. In a B2B scenario, there is a whole sales and distribution org that brings it to the customers, introduces it, gives demos, gives them demo environments to play, talks about integration, gives solutions, gives bills of material, right? What will be the solution architecture? Where will my software be hosted? Google Cloud, AWS, Microsoft Azure, private cloud, where? How will people access? What will be the security features, right? Who can access, who cannot? All of these things happen as part of a B2B sale, which is why it is long, it is tedious, requires a lot of back and forth, requires dedicated set of people who are just dealing with the sale, right? And that is why when these salespeople are selling and the customer says, oh, your product does not have this, they will often come back to the B2B product manager and put a lot of pressure on you. That I'm going to lose this deal because you did not put this product feature in the roadmap earlier. You should have had it by now. I'm going to lose this $10 million deal because of you, product manager. Right? So guys, as a B2B product manager, that's part of the job description. You have to manage your sales team. And oftentimes, if a large customer comes in, your product roadmap will have to go through a serious change, which is not easy because the earlier version of the roadmap was committed to 10 other smaller customers. Okay. So it's a fine balance. You don't want to lose a $10 million deal, but you don't want to make the 10 $500,000 customers unhappy as well. Okay, so a little bit of management to do there. Right, so in the B2B sales cycle, all of this happens. And as a B2B product manager, please familiarize yourself with all of these phases as to what goes on in every single phase, because invariably, you will be pulled into conversations. In a B2B sales scenario, there will be subject matter experts on the customer side as well. And they will often ask in-depth, complicated questions that the sales team cannot answer. The product manager will be on call with the sales team, handling those complex questions, taking care of them and helping to close the deal. Okay. Right. So data, super important. But in B2B scenario, you often rely more on the user feedback. Right. Take an example of Swiggy. You can collect data as to how the user clicks. Do they select the food item first, or do they select the restaurant first? Or do they select the cuisine first? Okay. Do more people order from newer restaurants or the ones that they've ordered from before? You can get all of these data points and analyze user behavior. In B2B scenario, you cannot do that because the workflow was designed by someone else. 10 users got together in a room and designed the workflow, and now 1,000 users are using the same workflow, whether they like it or not. So now you have to get into the room with the end user or get on a call with the end user and say, okay, give me your feedback, right? Subjective feedback becomes extremely important in B2B. And in the next 4 or 5 slides, I'll just kind of give you a flavor of what's going on in the market between B2B versus B2C product managers. All of these are excerpts from a report published by a company called Pendo, which is into digital, platform onboardings and user experience management. Quick check on what are the most common roles that people were playing before getting into product management. B2B, it was marketing and project management. In B2C, again, marketing and either a customer success or a consulting role. Okay. How important is your alignment with other functions in the company? Where if you're in B2B, the most important is your marketing, design, and engineering. In B2C, it is business operations and customer success, right? So you see the difference. Who are you engaging with more versus in B2B versus B2C? What are your sources of new ideas? In B2C, a large number of ideas are being generated by the product team themselves. They decide what to build, right? Swiggy team might decide, oh, this is what we want to build. They don't go talk to people ordering food from Swiggy. But in B2B, a similar number, the top ranking is the customer feedback. Okay. And look at where customer feedback is in B2C, right at the 4th position, under 10%. Okay. So again, huge difference in how you get ideas. What are the different kinds of tools you use? Again, it's B2B is more about prototyping. B2C is more about experimentation. User feedback is critical in B2B versus B2C. So use more tools to capture that feedback, make it easy to analyze and so on. Not much of a difference when it comes to years of feedback, but yeah, salary difference does exist beyond a certain number of years of experience when it comes to B2B versus B2C. Okay. And lastly, we've talked about B2B is different versus B2C, but imagine a company like an Urban Clap, or now it's called Urban Company. We experience as end users the B2C aspect of it. You have an app, you want to book a salon service at home, open the app, order something, the guy shows up. But there's a huge B2B component at the back that we often don't get to engage with. It's almost like an ERP where all orders come in, algorithms decide which order goes to whom, right? And all the billing, accounting, all of that kind of stuff happens. Similar is the case with Swiggy, Zomato as well. Okay, so that's the end of the deck. Dheeraj has another question. Guys, I would strongly encourage, go on, share your questions, or maybe raise your hands and Pragya can unmute you and I can answer your questions as well. So I'll take Dheeraj's question till then. Having worked for B2B for almost a decade, I've seen B2B product feature development being sponsored or funded by customers. I can't take names, but some of the biggest automotive giants have sponsored the developments of our new features. I sincerely believe this is only a dream for B2C. Please confirm, right? So again, Dheeraj, you've definitely been there, done that. And if you see here, this slide will probably answer this question. And as you rightly said, the idea source, number one for B2B is your customer feedback. So a $10 million customer or a $50 million customer comes in and says, hey, if you give me this feature, I'll buy your product. And everybody makes it happen. In B2C, if 1,000 users gather and say something, maybe you will not do it, right? Unless it's a glaring bug, obviously you'll fix it, right? But yeah, it's not how the B2C roadmap currently works. Okay. Any more questions, guys?
Raise your hand and I can unmute you if you directly.
I didn't realize I could turn my camera on. My apologies.
Finally, we could see you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I tried it at the beginning of the session. It said the host has prevented. So I thought maybe that's the format, but okay. So while we're waiting for some questions, I'm happy to share some resources for you guys to go look at. For those who have not, I strongly recommend a few books. Read the book called Hooked by Nireal. It's the most important book, if there ever was one, when it comes to B2B product management, right? And read another book called Upstream by Dan Heath. Right? Two fantastic books about B2B product management. Do we have some more questions in the chat as well? Oh yeah, sure. I can put in the names here. It's called Upstream is one by Dan Heath. And then the other one is Hooked by Nireal. More questions, guys?
So thank you so much for the name of the books. I will myself read those books, I think so.
Surely,
because this was
fantastic.
Really,
fantastic.
It was a very insightful session.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. We have enjoyed having you with us, Mr. Gaurav. It was a complete pleasure. And thank you for taking out time from a weekend that was Sunday morning. And thank you, audience, for joining in. And thank you, audience who have joined us via LinkedIn as well. So
I do have two other questions, Pragya. Is it okay if we take them?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So there's a question, very, very interesting question from Khurshid Salma. What are the differences in metrics used to measure success in both? So in B2C, you typically hear about the pirate metrics. Pirate metrics is acquisition, adoption, retention, revenue, and referral, right? So those are the most commonly used ones in B2C, where you're measuring each individual's journey on your B2C solution. But in B2B, the most important success metric is your customer's ROI. So for example, we provide services to hospitals in the US. And the simple metric that we present to them is how much time did we save for your doctors? You multiply that by a certain notional dollar amount, and we say, okay, every hour of your doctor was worth so much. And, every year we save you these many dollars. So that's what the B2B customer really cares about. There are other metrics as well, but it's a whole different, session and a conversation. But in general, customer success in B2B is your biggest metric. Moving on to the other question from Ravi Kant, does distance degree help to get into product management with certification course? I've been working with digital media and my skill sets are SaaS. So Ravi, we live in a beautiful world where formal qualifications or degrees have become less important. Your knowledge has become more important, at least when it comes to the world of product management. I myself have, a couple of distance course programs that I've done in product management, and I think it's fantastic. So please go for it if you want to. It's your knowledge, it's your ability to think that'll make you a great product manager. Fantastic.
Great. Thank you so much for answering all the questions, Mr. Gaurav. And it was really an insightful session. And thank you, audience, for joining in on a Sunday morning. So hope to host you in future again. Have a great weekend. Have a great Sunday. Hope to see you all soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Next.